community analysis and need assessment. Here in this figure, we can see two rings, I guess, two circles. The outer ring, that's the Patron Community, and the inner ring, here we have the library. Here in Patron Community, I may add that we have to, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, we have to talk about active users and potential users, okay, in the Patron Community. So because we have people that are actively participating in the library by either visiting the library, getting ebooks, or using the computers, and we have a large segment of the population who never goes to the library or uses any of their resources or collections or services. So we have to think about active users and potential users. A community analysis here, it's a picture of the information needs of the community at large, of the active users and the potential users. And these are the functions of the library staff here. Selection policies, selection, acquisition, weeding, and evaluation. And the library staff makes the decisions to develop their collection according to one of the inputs, one of the most important inputs, which is the community analysis. Of course, what we get from the community analysis have to go through the process of the selection policies, which will limit what we can get and how we're going to get those materials, then the actual selection, then the actual acquisition, then taking out of the collection those materials that for any reason are not up to date or are in bad shape, and we can get rid of them unless they have historical value, and then the evaluation. And this is something that we have to be doing all the time, of course. And this is a function. Collection management is something that we do continuously. Okay, in this second figure, we have the Patron Community. Again, active library users and potential users, and they have relationships with materials producers and distributors, meaning information producers. They have relationships with other libraries, and of course they have a relationship with their own library. And here, when we're when we talk about Patron Community, we may be talking about a community that surrounds a public library, or the school community, students and staff and the school library, or the university community, students, staff, and faculty that are part of that community, and the library staff. Okay, and of course, depending on your library, you will have a reader service staff, you will have a collection development staff, an acquisition staff, cataloging, etc., etc. But I just want to make sure that you understand that these are theoretical models. It doesn't have to be the same in each library. However, I think they have some value because they help us to understand how collection management and collection development happens through one of the major inputs, which is community analysis. The community here, or the Patron Community, or the community of information seekers, and this is, I think, how they have been called lately, it becomes one of the major inputs in the function of selection, because we are there, the library is there to serve them. This is a service-oriented profession. So we are there to address their information needs. That's why they are so important. And as we saw before in a past lecture, we think differently today than what we used to think in the past. Today, we are here to serve our community. We are here to address the information needs of the community. Okay? So what are some of the laws of collection development? The first one is, as the size of the community increases, there will be a more diverse information needs, and this is true. The larger the community, the more diverse the information needs will be. Secondly, as the individual needs are more diverse, the need for cooperative programs with other libraries increases, and this is also something that we have to take into account, because if our needs, if the information needs are larger and more complex and more diverse, one library won't be able to address the information needs of their community or the information needs of the information seeker. So you need to cooperate with other libraries and other library systems. One example of that cooperation is the interlibrary loan. The third one, it is impossible to satisfy the information needs of the community. And of course, this is something that we have to recognize. We won't be able to satisfy all the information needs of the community. Even though we make an effort to, it is impossible. Selection of materials by library type. We have public libraries, and in public libraries in general, again, this is a model from the literature. It doesn't have to be like that in your library, but it's a way to understand how the selection takes place. In public libraries, the selection is done title by title, and the selection is done by librarians, of course, with the input of the community analysis. In school libraries, the title by title selection too, and the selection is done by the media specialists, librarians, teachers, administrators, and parents. In special libraries, there's a narrow subject selection because you want to have the main information material for your specialty. Okay, and the materials are selected by the client. At least the librarian that works in a special library knows the objective of the institution and knows the objective of their library. So they get materials in the discipline or specialty of where the library of the institution where the library is located, being a law library, a health library, a botanist library, a botanical garden library, etc. There are many examples of specialized libraries, and you have to get the material in accordance to the specialty of the institution where the library belongs to. In academic libraries, it's also very complex because you have faculty, you have instructors, you have students, you have grad students, you have the staff, you have the librarians too. So what they do is they have mixed committees of faculty and other members of the community and librarians to help in the selection process. In large academic libraries, they have subject specialists, and of course, depending if the community is a research university or if it's a teaching university, it will have different objectives. So it is very complex in terms of selection in academic libraries, especially, for example, with serials collections. And of course, another additional problem that it touches every type of library is the budgetary constraints. It's a lack of funding. So we have to take that into consideration too. What information the community needs. And this is we use different terms for the same thing. In needs assessments is used in special libraries. Community analysis is used in public libraries. User studies, it's what you find when you're reading peer-reviewed journals. Other terms that are used is market analysis. But actually, even though we're talking about different terms, what we're trying to find out is what are the information needs of the community, or what are the information needs of the information seeker. And this is what I was mentioning before, active and potential users. And the idea here is that, of course, we have a core of active users, and we have to make sure that we are providing to their information needs, that we are addressing their information needs, because they are our clientele. However, there's a large segment of the population that is not a that large segment is not a active. They are not actively using the library. However, we have to find a way to know what their information needs are, because we want them to come to the library. Okay, and it is very difficult to identify or to know actually our potential users. It's easier with our active users, but it's very hard with the potential users. So we have to devise a way to reach them so they can come to the library. One thing that we have to take into consideration is that every human being has information needs. Every person in the world has information needs. It doesn't matter the age, the sex or the gender, the cultural or ethnic background, the level of education, income, etc. Everyone has information needs, and the library should be there to address and satisfy those information needs. So we have to identify, and here's another point here, we have to be able to identify the community information needs, the information needs of our community. One way to see our community is by the limits, either political, national, regional, state, province, county, city, town, etc., or by groups too, if it's a university, college, school, government, agency, private organization, etc. There are many ways to define the community of users. We can define them by cultural and ethnic background. We can define them by language, etc., etc. Now we have to collect data to know what they need. One way to collect data, or several ways to collect data, are historical data that we can find in our archives, neighborhood immersion, that's going to the neighborhood and talking to people, observing and communicating to see what they need and what they are using, to see what that's a great way to find out about their information needs. We also may use, and I think it is very important to use, statistical data, social indicators, social economic indicators, census data, anecdotal data, talking to people. Then having key informants, that they can be community leaders, how influential they are, etc., so how representative they are. This is a question that we have to ask ourselves. But talking to community leaders is very important. And of course, talking with the community at large, having community forums, inviting the community to our library. We can segment who are we going to invite. We may invite young adults, adolescents. We may have a children's day. We may have a elders day, etc., etc. And talk to them and see what they need. And following what the community analysis or the needs assessment, then we can decide on what materials are we going to select for our collection. Of course, there is field work. We can do surveys, we can do interviews, and there is data available at the library. We have user records, we have circulation, and we have electronic statistics. However, be aware that when we're talking about data available at the library, we're talking about data of active users, of patrons. We are not talking about potential users because they don't visit the library. So we have to make that distinction, and the idea would be to collect data on active users and data on potential users. Data and information. We have age level, and these are variables that are very important to understand our community and to understand the community's information needs. Age levels, social economic indicators, sex and gender, ethnic background, languages spoken, education, income, hobbies, social and recreational opportunities, cultural facilities, etc. These are variables that we have to understand, that we have to identify in order to understand our community and their information needs. Okay? Some examples of questions are: do you know where is the library located? Have you used the library? Do you have internet at home? Have you ever visited the library? This is especially important for a potential user. Why do you visit the library? Do you find what you are looking for? That's an open-ended question. Have you checked any material? That's a closed question. Do you use a computer at the library? Do you use a computer at home? What services do you use? We want to know as much as possible about our active users and potential users too. Community analysis recap. Defining your borders, neighborhood immersion, walk around your community, observe, participate, and I would add there, communicate. Collect data, statistical data, anecdotal data, surveys, interviews, data available at the library. We already talked about Patron records, circulation, interlibrary loan, ebooks, now with the tablets, electronic readers, etc. From there we can find a lot of information. However, again, take into consideration that we have active users and we have potential users. We don't have data available at the library of potential users. And another consideration is that the active users may be checking books, ebooks or printed books, it doesn't matter, or other materials, magazines, movies, games, whatever you offer at your library, but because they don't have any other choice. If you had something different, they may be checking something differently. So those are concerns that we have to take into consideration when we're making sense of the data, and when we are analyzing the data. Let's go back again just for a second to this first figure, because I think it is very important. Here, Patron Community, please make a note that we're talking about active users and potential users. In the community analysis, we have a picture of who they are and what they want in terms of information resources. And then we take that input and we mix it with another input, which is our selection policies. Every library must have collection management or collection development policies, and one chapter of that policy is a selection policy. Then we have the selection procedure, acquisition, of course. We are limited by our budget constraints, by our funding constraints, so we cannot get everything that the community wants. But remember the laws about the community. We cannot satisfy every community wants or need. And then we have to weed some materials because they are old, because they have not historical value, because they are out of date, etc., etc. But these functions and evaluation within acquisition, selection policies, and not so much community analysis, though I would say that in a formal way, it's not something that it's done all the time. But these are permanent functions of the library, all of them in some way or the other. Okay. We may do a year. We may have a program 1 year. We may have a plan for a community analysis, for a formal community analysis 1 year. Okay, so that's not something that we're going to do every year because it costs money and time. But however, informally, we should, as librarians, be with our eyes open even if we're gathering anecdotal evidence or talking to the community, we should be doing community analysis all the time. The same with selection, the same with acquisition, within an evaluation. At least selection. Acquisition may be done once a year or whichever schedule we work on. But community analysis and selection and evaluation of our resources should be done continuously. As when I work as a librarian, as an academic librarian for many years, I was doing all the time community analysis and selection and evaluation of my resources. Because I was a reference librarian, and the students were coming at me asking me questions about this and that resource, and they will tell me what they needed and couldn't find. Okay, and we didn't have available for them. So I was doing community analysis right there, listening to their information needs and how the library was going to address those information needs. So this is something that we have to do. Again, and I think I have been emphasizing this from the very beginning, and I do emphasize this when I teach my courses. Remember, we are a service-oriented profession. Remember, we are here to help the community to access information to address their needs and their wants. That's what we are for. This is who we are. This is our core. Okay, so analyzing the community and selecting material and evaluating our collection is something that we librarians should be doing continuously. Why? Because we want to offer a better service. Okay, the idea here is to offer a better service to our active users and to bring into the library our potential users.